Good morrow from a wet and windy Djuma private game reserve. My name is Brent Leo Smith. We have Brian Joubert on camera, and this is Safari Live. And we had an incredible storm last night, and we're going to try to stay out, even though there is still quite a bit of rain out. And so we will try to give you a decent safari this morning, but hopefully the wind and the weather stay in the east. Look who's out in search of frogs. There's a saddle-billed stork. Can hear the frogs. Oh, he's got something there. There should be some bushveld rain frogs, sand frogs all coming out from the ground, and all the predators that go along with them. We also did have quite a lot of lion audio towards the east of us this morning while it was still raining. So difficult to tell with the wind and the weather, but I'm hoping it is not on Djuma, not on Buffalo's Hook. So Jamie's going to go head off to the southwestern sections, and we're going to head off to the northeast. Also, a bit of curiosity to see how much rain we actually had. I think we had probably about 20 mils. Great little rain, but I don't know if it's enough. And we're going to have a look now at the Djuma waterhole. I doubt this parched earth will have retained any of the water. I think it would have all seeped straight through. There'll be some puddles, but I think the major water holes are not going to be full. Miles is wondering what's swimming in the Djuma pan. Morning, Miles. Miles, I did see Pete, the pond hippo. He's still there. While it's fresh and early, and while we have the opportunity before more weather comes in, and let's go check for those lions. So Tommy also heard those lions on that Djuma cam. As you can see, almost zero water in the water hole. More than there was yesterday though. It is just buried those catfish skulls. You can hear frogs in the distance. Hopefully we will find some frogs this morning on safari. Alyssa says, look at all the puddles. What a great start to the wet season. Well, Alyssa, it's a bit of a late start to the wet season. And as I said, I don't think we got much more than 25, 30 mils. So really great little rain. Like normally by this time of the year, we've had quite a few of these rains. So I still feel that it's going to be a very, very dry year. Hey guys. I just have to be on the game drive radio quickly. Morning mobile stations, routes and updates please. Copy, thanks Aubrey. We're going to be checking Buffalo's cut lines with Buffalo's Dam. We did have some in Gala audio, but I think it might be in the north. So we did see that beautiful saddle-billed stork as we got going this morning, and that Roger was wondering what bird that is, and Roger's a new viewer, so welcome Roger. Don't forget to keep a bird list. I think the birding could be quite good this morning, so we will keep our eyes out for our feathered friends. And while we head up towards our northern boundary, we're going to go to the gorgeous Jamie to see what she's been up to so far this morning.
And a very, very good morning to all of you. We apologize for our slightly delayed start, but what a beautiful morning it is. We've finally been treated to a bit of relief from the heat that's been building over the last few days, and already the birds and the frogs and the insects are all out and about and enjoying it in a cacophony of sounds. Look at those amazing clouds. It really is such a wondrous relief to be out and about when there's been just that little bit of rain to break the drought, and I'm sure all of the animals are out rejoicing, so let's go and find them. Now, I've said that it's really thrilling to have had a little bit of rain. That's because South Africa, and particularly this area, is in the grips of a serious drought. And Jeffrey, you were wondering when the last drought was in this area. Jeffrey, who's watching all the way in Texas, good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. As far as I know, the last drought to some degree was around 2007, but this is predicted to be far, far worse than that one. This was before my time living in this area. And then the last really bad drought, as far as I know, was around 1998. But for both of those, this drought is predicted to be worse. The problem was that last year was also incredibly dry. So it's slowly building up year by year. And although it is a relief to have the rain that we have had, it's a long way from relieving us of the pressures of the drought. We probably, I don't know, I was guessing maybe 10 mils last night, maybe a little bit more. It definitely rained solidly for a good couple of hours. It's a wonderfully atmospheric way to spend the evening, listening to the rain on the roof. And the other wonderful thing is, of course, is that it provides for perfect hunting weather for the predators out here. So we'll be keeping an eye. We've got a fresh start for this morning. Also means, of course, that there are no tracks visible at all. Not even elephants leave tracks in this kind of weather. Although it looks bright and green and full of color, the truth is that the nutrients have slowly been disappearing from the trees and the grass. And Jessica, you were wondering how it affects the herbivores, this particular drought. The answer is fairly badly. It's not that they don't have access to water, because they do. They have to move a bit further for it, but there's still water points throughout the reserve. The problem is actually the nutrients within the grass and the leaves. And even though it looks green, that's because it's the natural plant response to the summer day length. It's not actually in response to the amount of water that we've received, which means that for the herbivores, they're not getting the nutrients they need. We've seen a lot of very, very thin-looking buffalo in particular. They're really struggling because they're bulk grazers, so they rely almost entirely on the nutrition levels of the grass around here. And for things like kudu and inyala, they're a little bit, sure, it's a little windy. We've seen some very sad cases of baby elephants struggling to suckle from their mothers because their mothers aren't getting the nutrients they need to produce milk. It is quite a sad situation. Droughts are incredibly difficult to witness. It's a natural cycle of things, but of course made all the worse by human intervention, because the animals here can't really migrate. Although they have an enormous area to move around in, they definitely can't migrate. There's a tree in the road. Thank you, Elise. That must have happened sometime last night, because that definitely wasn't there yesterday. Now we've got to find a way around it. without a flat tire. Sorry, Billy. A little bit damp and a little bit wet. Not an ideal way to spend the morning. There we go. This isn't really the direction I was wanting to go. Do a quick U-turn. Well, that's where that's the. I have to be honest, I do hope that that wind is bringing more rain. Same effect here. And yes, it does. There's a lot happening at work, but a lot of it is the El Nino effect that's playing out across the world, and it is affecting us here in South Africa as well. I know that a lot of the big cities and the big towns are under major water restrictions. And of course in South Africa, one of the big water users is the mining industry. So it has a knock-on effect not only on our wildlife, but actually the entire country's economy. And we better hope that the rain comes. It has gone very quiet. It's the one thing you notice after a rainy day like today. As I said, those thunderstorms and windy conditions definitely make for your hunting times. The animals all go to ground because they recognize this. They go and they hide low in the bushes as far away from the roads as they can get. It is wonderful though to come out on a fresh morning like this morning. And Lissa, you are absolutely right. Compared to the dust and heat haze that was hanging over this entire area yesterday, to come out and have the air clean and fresh is really enjoyable. Also breaks the heat. It's quite difficult to get to sleep when it's sort of 35 to 40 degrees or over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So having that little bit of relief is very welcome. And speaking of clear air, we'll try and stop and get you a view of the Drakensberg Mountains now that they're no longer obscured behind the haze and the dust as they have been. The thing about the rains is we watch these Drakensberg Mountains off into the distance and that incredible skies, that it brings out all kinds of reptiles and creepy crawlies, and I believe that Brent has found one to show you.
So the happiest, so apart from the frogs, tortoises are going to be extremely happy. Here we have a little Speaks hinged who's out, lots of moisture around. Doesn't need to worry about moving between puddles for a drink. You can see really enjoying that nice flush grass around him. Hopefully he'll stop for a little bit of a feed on his merry way. So we're likely to see quite a few tortoises out this sunrise safari with the wet weather from last night. Little armored cars moving around. Also it's giving us a chance to stop up on some high ground on our northern boundary and see if those lions start calling again. You can see that little hinge sort of 3/4 of the way down the back, that where he gets part of his name from. So So one of the two tortoise species we get here on Djuma and Arathusa. Well, we'll let that little tortoise be on its merry way, and we are going to do the same. You can see it quite dark still up ahead of us here. A little bit of breakup to the south, but we'll see. The weather keeps changing quite quickly at the moment. So difficult to say which direction it's coming from. The wind is chopping and changing, and it's just become quite strong. It's going to be very, very difficult to see tracks today, but we will try. One of the biggest misconceptions is that after heavy rain, tracks are easier to find. It is actually the complete opposite. So what happens is the rain pounds down and compresses the ground, and it's near impossible to see something like a lion or leopard that walk very light these tracks. They literally have to walk in mud, and they're not such big fans of the mud. So actually very, very difficult to track after rain. And Anna Marie was wondering, she thought it would be much easier. So Lael's got quite an interesting little question there. Is the rain here warm where you can enjoy a rain bath? Or is it cold, as in you will get hypothermia? Well, it depends. Quite often it is very warm. I get cold very easily, so I'm not a big fan of being out in it. But it's definitely it's not hypothermic cold by any means. And Brian is our resident weather expert. He's got these sites he looks at that have got wind maps and stuff. So instead of going by the normal predictions, he predicts himself. And he says it's going to be clear by the sunset safari. I think he might be right. So we're approaching the Buffalo's Hook waterhole. And while we do that, let's go see what Jamie's got.
We've come across a pair of female giraffe that apparently were seen yesterday as well. They were being followed by a male. Well, they've managed to ditch him now. Very pale coloured giraffe. They're actually fascinating to look at. I know we often chat about how giraffe darken with age, but there's also a genetic aspect involved, and these are genetically pale females. Hello, girl. You have to, just thinking about the night that they must have experienced last night, standing out and exposed in the rain. Now, lots of people have wondered whether or not animals get struck by lightning. And for these two, their risk is probably the highest of all the animals, just because they are that much higher. And you'll find that they'll try and move away from big open areas like this during thunderstorms, because it is common for giraffe, because they stand out like that. Oh, you can see that bulge moving down. Oh, and there's an oxpecker braving the cold and the wind. Very pretty, interesting color. Now the one on the left, just having a look at her shoulder there, I'm assuming this was something that was seen yesterday. Well, that was quite a serious injury, whatever that was. It's healed up completely now, but it's left a very deep scar. And it's probably something you noticed yesterday. Could be either from a lucky escape from a lion, but just looking at the shape and the angle of it, I wonder whether it wasn't caused by running into sort of a log that was sticking out. If the giraffe was running past it, it might have scraped along her shoulder blade like that. Because an injury like that would have been actually quite difficult for a lion to have caused unless it was on her back and using its claws. Whatever it was, she's clearly had a lucky escape, because that must have been very deep. Enjoying her morning breakfast. Also, I'm just wondering whether or not these two giraffes are related. They are both young, but they're also very, very pale in colour. And I think there is a chance that they're moving around together because they're related. Giraffes don't really have a set herd structure. They come and go as they please, but they will favour the company of other giraffe. You might find that these two come from the same genetic stock. Beautiful and very peaceful. The one on the right has been keeping a very close eye on us. She's stopped to ruminate for a bit, and if we watch how she does it, we'll be able to see the bulges in her neck as she swallows and then brings up the next ball of cud. Wait for it. There we go. Up into the mouth. Did you guys see that bulge that moved along her neck? I know many of our regular viewers have watched this many times, but just imagine the power of the muscles and the coordination required to work together to get the food to move up that distance. And that elegant stride that is the only other animal that shares that stride with the same legs on the same side working together is a camel. There we go. It's all right, girl. You go ahead. Now, giraffe only really have two strides. They either walk or they run. They can't trot like something like a zebra or an antelope or even a horse can do. But that stride can be deceptive. Ladies probably are more at risk than any others in terms of lightning strikes. That being said, many of us have domestic pets that absolutely are terrified of the sound of thunder and lightning. And Roger, you were wondering if there are any animals out here, maybe the cats, for example, that are terrified of thunderstorms. The answer is no, not really. They grow up with them. Not often you get to see that. She had her head right down. Very interesting question from Wolf Kiss about the giraffe mane and whether or not it serves any kind of purpose. And the answer is not really, apart from maybe if it's erected slightly to make the males look bigger. I'm trying to think if there's any other reason that it might be there, and I can't really think of anything. It's the same with zebra manes. They don't necessarily serve much of a purpose except to maybe highlight them in a visual way. They are always darker than the rest of the giraffe. These giraffe are moving off, but I'll try and get us one last view of them. watching that giraffe munch away, and Justin, you were wondering if they have multiple sets of teeth throughout their life in the same way elephants do. And the answer to that is no. Elephants are quite unique in that particular aspect, the way that their sets of teeth replace 6 times throughout their lives. For the most part, antelope species and giraffes, so part of the bovids family, they'll have one set of teeth throughout their lives. That is after, of course, they've lost their baby teeth. They are born with baby teeth, milk teeth. She's having a bit of a scratch. I don't want to speak too loudly because I don't want her to stop what she's doing. She's got an itchy cheek. Now the other side. Here we go. As you can imagine, they can't exactly lift their hooves up to scratch behind their ears in the same way. Oh, look, in the ear. Is that better, girl? Having now used the branch as a Q-tip or an earbud, she's on the move again. I wonder whether this wasn't mother-daughter combination, with the one on the right being slightly bigger and then probably the mother. They're nibbling away. They've stopped ruminating and they're now actively eating. But we did watch that bolus come up the neck, and Julia, you were wondering if they have to do anything to do that, as in, is it a voluntary action or whether it happens automatically. And I don't know. I have thought about it, and I'm not too sure if we will ever actually know the answer to that unless we really investigate into their brainwaves. I think personally it must be involuntary, but there must be something that triggers that reflex from when they are actively eating to versus when they are ruminating or just standing sleeping. So there must be some level of control over it, if that makes any sense. But I think maybe just the trigger of the action might be voluntary, and then the rest of the action is involuntary. Hello. Hello, big girl. Yes, we are talking about you in great detail. Quick nostril clean with that incredibly long tongue. And I know that it's something that we remark upon multiple times, but those incredibly tough prehensile lips and tongue. It's interesting to watch her feeding in this way with her head right down. And you'll notice she doesn't do it for any prolonged period of time before she brings that head back up. And the same applies for when they drink. The way that their neck's structured and the valves and blood vessels within the neck and the strength of the heart means that they actually can't keep their heads down for too long a period without compromising the blood flow to their brains. There you go, head up again. And it's usually never more than about 30 seconds. There are stories of giraffe that, for example, if they're really thirsty, have been drinking with their head down for too long. She's going to climb in the bush now. Now we spoke a little bit about their stride and the fact that even their walk is deceptively fast. Sammy, you were wondering how fast a giraffe can run. She's really enjoying that bush. I think part of it's been pushed over by an elephant, so she's got access to some of the nice new green shoots at the top. Sammy, in terms of how fast they can run, you're probably looking at about 50 kilometers an hour at their maximum, maybe even up to 60 because those legs are so long. And to convert that into miles, there's probably, forgive me if my conversions are not 100% accurate, probably around the region of just under 25 miles to up to just under 30 miles per hour. Something so peaceful about them. And even their run is incredibly graceful. It looks slow, but it covers huge amounts of ground very fast. Now we've got a little bit more information coming through about the voluntary versus involuntary action of bringing up the bolus, so that ruminating action. And Joel says that action, the ruminating action, is automatic, which makes them kosher animals. I'm just interested at the fact that their body knows when they want to stop and ruminate versus when they want to stop and sleep, or when they want to just stop and look. They don't always ruminate, they ruminate when it's appropriate. The big girls. I promise you I'll leave you soon if you could go about your breakfast. Both of them are feeding very low. This is also an animal that probably, having chatted a bit about the effect of the drought on herbivores, the giraffe have a slight advantage over other animals in that they can reach higher up onto the trees. So the growth points in the leaves that are growing at the top of the trees that carry the most amount of nutrients, they've got the best access to those, along with elephants, and it will help sustain them for a little bit longer. Oh, itch. Oh, they're very itchy today. That was impressive. I don't think I've ever seen a giraffe do that. Well, these ladies have been incredibly entertaining for the start of the morning, but I believe that Brent has another ruminant to show you, so let's head across and have a look.
We've got a big waterbuck bull. Oh, there you go, that's his head. He's got those lovely ribbed horns. And there's an Inyala in the background as well. So out of all the antelope species, he probably would have been the driest last night. He's got a really interesting gland on the back of their neck that they excrete a very waxy, smelly substance from, and they spread that all over their body. Gives them a sort of waterproof layering. Their fur is also a bit different. It's hollow, so it's almost far more a quill than a hair, and that also helps to give them that waterproof. Oh, I'm trying to think of the right word for this. And their rain jacket. So, chatting about how these guys would have dealt with the storm last night, Jane in Virginia would like to know, do the grazing animals find shelter? Jane, it's a really bad time for grazing animals during storms. Firstly, because they can't hear and smell predators approaching, so the predators really like to hunt in that weather. But most of them will just bucker down where they happen to be at the time of the storm hitting. Looking at us quite intently there. Still checking around, making sure there's nothing else about. Fortunately, that strong wind seems to have dissipated. But bad news on the track front and audio front, the lions are to the northeast of us, and the other lions calling are to the south of us. It feels like I haven't seen lions in ages. You can see that very distinct white ring. Almost looks like he sat on a freshly painted toilet seat. It's a following mechanism for another water buck to follow. Oh, head scratch on the thorn tree. So I think we should have and I think Scott and James did a bit of a bird challenge. I think we should have a mammal challenge this morning between the two vehicles. See how many species of mammal we can get. And we got 2 in that little segment, just in case anyone was wondering. I'm not quite sure on what Jamie is at the moment. So let's see who can find the most mammals on this sunrise safari after a monster storm. I've just heard Jamie is on 1 giraffe. So let's continue on and see what we can see. And I think I saw some movement up ahead for another species. So, Sarah is wondering, what is the most surprising and unexpected thing? Oh, there's number 3. They're disappearing, but there you go, impala. Well, Sarah's wondering what is the most unexpected and surprising thing I found on a drive. Well, Sarah, that's a very interesting question. We find some quite strange things out here. I normally drop by people. I found many sunglasses, hats, jerseys, shoes. But from an animal point of view, found pangolin, aardvark. But still probably, I was very young and it wasn't an actual game drive, but it was a drive through to school with my mother, and we saw a menelistic leopard, or a black leopard. That's probably the most surprising thing I've ever seen. Hey guys, on the radio for a second. Go ahead, Scotty. No, Scotty, no updates. There was line audio to the north, line audio to the south. And that's it so far. I did Gary Cutline up to Buffalo's Hook, down to Cheetah Cutline. Jamie went down towards Impala Plain side. There we go, a pair of Basilia. They would have been buffeted by the wind and rain last night, so they're probably going to be a bit late in rising this morning. You can see they're looking a little bedraggled. Now, interestingly enough, it takes them 8 years to obtain that adult coloring. So the sub-adults are very brown and drab in comparison to the adults, with that black, grey, white and red. But you can see all fluffed up, hoping for a bit of sunshine to dry them out. I'm sure there's been quite a lot of wing flapping earlier to try to get some of the water off them. And quite a lot of your big predatory birds prefer to perch or sleep in these dead trees. It's easier for them to take off and land, not having all those small branches in the way. And let's continue. See what other creatures we can find. I think we better discuss the rules of this mammal challenge quickly. And instead, we've got 3 impala, nyala, and waterbuck so far. Apparently, Jamie's only got 1 giraffe, and so obviously it has to be shown on camera. We can, I think, show the same species. So let's just see which vehicle can find the most mammals on this sunrise safari. Oh, so it sounds like Jamie's catching up. Let's go see what she's got.
This little one made it through its first storm. Now apparently we're having a competition. I was unaware of the competition, but Brent will be absolutely insufferable if he wins it. So you all have to help me keep an eye out for any mammal that we can possibly find. Probably cheating to count every single impala in this herd though. I'm tempted to. In which case we are looking at somewhere in the region of about, I would say about 30. Also, the hippo doesn't really count because we know exactly where that hippo is anywhere. The rest of the herd is off to my right, all with some shaken looking babies, slightly damp and rather chilly. But they survived their first dark, scary, stormy night. One rather confused male making rutting sounds. Something we've discussed a lot is the confusion on behalf of the males. All the high levels of estrogen floating about with the births of the baby. Oh, breakfast, Mom. Come on, Mom. Nope. I'm sure, well, this might be something that Brent has discussed, but during these storms, what is very common is that the babies get separated from their mothers. Oh, he's managed to get Mom to stand still. Oh dear, and Brent has found a mammal, so let's head across to him.
So, we've got number 4, the grey duiker, or Grimm's bush duiker, a little male. And we've got lions calling behind us, but unfortunately out of our traverse area. Hopefully they're on the move. We're going to go have a look there now. It's quite nice to have them not running at full speed away from us. Oh, and off it goes. I'm just going to be on the game drive radio while we try head towards that area where that lion audio was. We're going to go back to Jamie, see what she's up to.
Well, the competition has now become quite serious. We're on 2, Brent's on 4. But come on, I mean, I've found the most numerous mammal, clearly. An entire herd of about 30 or more impala, maybe even 50. Most of the impala on this area have dropped their babies. It feels like everywhere that you look, there's just little impala wandering around. Those grunting sounds that you can hear is the male. What you looking at, impala? They all stopped and looked off to the left very suddenly, but whatever it is hasn't scared them enough to alarm call. I'm trying to listen to hear if I can figure out what it is they heard. They're still looking. What have you seen, guys? Of course, always important to pay attention to what the impala are doing. Their senses are on constant high alert, especially at this time of year. Oh, hello, little ones. What's up, girls? Interesting point. I'm trying to see if we can spot a male, but it's a bit of a struggle at the moment. He is too busy chasing the poor females all over the place. But Gail, you've wondered about antelope in general and whether or not they have feelings in their horns or any kind of nerve cells. And the answer to that is that I'm not entirely sure. They definitely do at the base, and it is living bone, so it would have some level of sensory perception. Probably, definitely, they could definitely feel pain, especially when they break. But in terms of any kind of sensitivity or touch, I'm not actually too sure. I don't think so. I doubt it. I don't see the point to having it. But they will be able to feel at the base of the horn. So if something impacts the horn, then they'll be able to feel that. Still looking off that way. What is it? I can't hear anything, but then I don't have the ears or the nose of an impala. And the wind is blowing from that direction. Let's go just have a look. Poke our nose around there. They might even be hearing alarm calls of another herd of impala that I can't hear that's a bit further off in that direction. Because they're still steering off that way. They don't seem panicked. They are alert to something. Let's go and investigate. See what's around the corner. Now, the last that we heard, the Djuma Pride were off towards Simbambili, which is quite close to where we are now. It wouldn't surprise me if they've started moving in this direction, if only to get across to Sydney's dam for access to water. Now, I've mentioned that I heard the rutting sounds of the impala, and Lokan was wondering if there's more mating after a storm. And the answer is no, not really. What you will find in terms of dominant male behavior is there'll be more territorial marking. So because their scent is washed away, any kind of urine spray, any markings have been washed clean by the storm, then the males tend to head out and patrol the boundaries of their territory quite regularly after a rainstorm. But in terms of mating, no, not really. The impala have a very specific mating season, which is around... Woo! Well done, Wildy. That would have been tragic. A giant land snail. Well spotted, wildebeest. Right, what were we talking about? Rutting impalas. I'm actually going to sit for just a moment and try and see if I can hear what those impala were listening to. So the impala have a very strict rutting breeding season, unlike most of the animals here. It's only really wildebeest and impala that have a really strict breeding season. But because of the spike in estrogen now that the impala ewes are giving birth, it's confusing the males. And what's fascinating to actually see as well is that the impala rams are not just responding in terms of behavior, they're responding physically as well. And much the same way as happens in May and June, their testicles are much more enlarged than they normally are. So they're suffering all of the physiological effects of a typical breeding season. They just have absolutely no hope of breeding with the females. The females are not in estrus. Watching the very slow progress of our giant land snail. Right, well, he's moved close enough off the road that I can loop around him. I still can't hear anything, but I'm going to head up to the corner around Sydney's dam and see if we can pick up on what those impala were listening to. Give him a wide berth. we're going to have to start keeping a very close eye out for. It's a bit soon after the rains, but you never know. We're going to have to keep an eye out for terrapins and road puddles. Drive through nice and slowly so that they have time to surf out of the way. And there you go. Virginia, in answer to your questions about what happens to terrapins when there is a drought, some of them will die just because they cannot get to any kind of water source, but they can cover, they are that sort of perfect intermediate between land tortoises and turtles, so they're not entirely water dependent. They can move large distances across land. They can and they do, to go and find water sources. How on earth they know instinctively where to go, always, it blows my mind. The fact that you will have a terrapin in a puddle within maybe 5 hours of a big rainstorm. Something that always fascinates me. There must be something instinctive in them, maybe a sense of smell, that they're aware of it. Hyena. Hey, is a mammal for our list. Do hyena. Well, no matter what tactics that Brent uses, for example, as X-Ranger says, putting a snail there to slow us down, we're still on top now because we've got two enormously full hyenas, probably on their way back to the den. I wonder if the impala didn't hear them contact calling. There's more there. Let's go find out what those two are up to. Oh, interesting. Oh, come on now. We got it. That surely is us winning the mammal competition. Hello, monsters. I think Brent and I might be tied. What's happening? There's some of the older cubs. What you up to, you lot? Looks like the twins that we often see coming to visit the den. And one slightly bullied looking adult, could be a male. Hello, good morning. Good morning. What have you been up to? How's it? Covered in mud and a sore. Oh, but you're dirty. Have you been rolling in mud? Gambling all the way around our car. Cute, man. What a nice way to start the day. I love hyenas. They're awesome. I'm sure they're racing back towards the den. I'm going to try and get another view of that larger individual that walked past us. It's got a big wound on the back, on its back area, the back right leg. Some serious play going on. I think these hyenas struck it lucky last night and have had a good meal somewhere off towards Buffelshoek and are now in high spirits. They've all got full bellies, except for the poor individual at the back that is covered in mud. Yeah, it's got a definite sore patch there. Hello, you lot. Oh, but you're so naughty. You just have that expression. Coming back to investigate us. Oh! Hello, puppy. Oh, cubby, what you doing? You not playing? Oh, we're coming back again. Are you not in serious high spirits, huh? Oh, hyenas are so much fun. I will reposition to get you a view in the moment. I just want to figure out exactly where this lot are going to go. Right now, they're right underneath our car, covered in mud face paint. What have you been up to, hey? Really interesting behavior. These two are actually bullying the older one. Oh, I love the mud face paint. Marge, I'm going to get to your question in a moment about the stride of a giraffe. And I'm going to try and show you with tracks as well. Which way are you going to go? You lot? Stop here for a moment. Marge has asked whether or not a hyena has the same stride as a giraffe. And the answer is no, they don't. They have an incredible crosswalk. Oh. Have you found a stick now? Tug of war going on. Playing just like puppies or kittens might do. I love that patch of mud. Shift back a little bit. What are you up to, you lots? That's what's so wonderful about them. Finding a spot to keep up with gambling hyenas, and that is what they're doing. They're gambling. Hey, monsters. I'm going to chew the log now. No. And isn't it amazing that we've got to watch these two grow up, and now watching them approaching at least adult or sub-adulthood, moving out and about on their own, still playing together. At least they have each other for company. Roger, I'm glad to hear that you love hyenas and giraffe as much as I do. Roger tells me that he's been watching our show for about 10 days and already his favorite animals have changed. There is nothing like the intelligence and curiosity and mischief of a spotted hyena. That's why they're at least my favorite predator. Are you coming to chew my car, monster? Not as brave as you were when you were cubs, eh? Still at the den. Now, I've definitely lost hubcaps before this way. So, Barbara, yes, I'll be keeping a close eye on them. I've turned my back for a couple of seconds before and then watched a hyena make off with the rubber cap that is the oil cap around the vehicle. They love them. Perfect chewing opportunity. Heading off to meet up with the other adult. I'm watching you. Yeah. Keeping a close eye on you. A game of catch. Awesome. Now, keeping up with hyenas off-road is almost impossible. But what I will do is, once we're finished with these lots, if we lose them into this block, and I know this block, it's incredibly dense, then we'll head across to the hyena den and see if they make their way in that direction afterwards. We're probably about, I would say, somewhere in the region of maybe 1.5 kilometers from the hyena den. I can see you. Hiding away in the bush there. Now they've had a nice meal of a carcass that they've probably scavenged, but Mokan, you're wondering if they will eat plants and insects as well. And the answer is yes, to an extent. They're incredibly versatile little creatures. There, I think he might even have perfectly snapped up a beetle there. And not fussy in terms of their diet. Generally, plants won't be eaten unless they are feeling unwell. So in the same way pet dogs and cats do, they will munch on a blade of grass if they're starting to feel a little bit sick, just to help bring that, whatever it is, up again. But they will eat insects. They'll stay away from the big, thick black millipedes that we see, because those are quite toxic to them. But especially at that sort of age, where they're investigating, first of all, they're growing, so they're constantly hungry. But second of all, they're investigating the world around them, including us. Come say hello. Come on, cub. There's that ranging stride, and I was trying to get hold of it to fully answer the question about the way that they walk. They move their left foot, their left front foot and their right back foot at the same time. They're not quite in sync. I can see what you mean, though. There is a slight difference to the way that other animals walk. But what's most important about hyena is the way that their back legs cross towards the opposite front foot. And that sloping sort of cross stride means that they, I'm trying to keep an eye on this little thing at the same time, means that they cover huge amounts of ground. It's a very energy efficient way of walking, which means that they can carry on with that sort of loping trot for kilometers and kilometers over one night. And they are designed to be nomadic creatures to an extent, to cover more distances, just as a way of competing with lions out here. The more ground you cover, the more access to food you're going to have. Now, when we were watching this little one play with its sibling, and I will preface this by saying I don't know whether it is a male or a female. It's difficult to tell. But both Wolf Kits and Nicole wanted to chat a little bit about the mock mounting that we saw. So when the one mounted the other, first of all, it's not in any way a mating attempt. It's not even a sexual attempt. And Nicole, you've said that your female dog will mount the male when they play. That kind of mounting is a dominance display, or an attempt at a dominance display. And it's very common when animals play with each other. It's also quite common to see two males out in the bush mount each other. It's a way of exerting their dominance over the other. Giraffe in particular do it fairly regularly. So it's not in any way a sort of a sexual attempt at mating. It is just part of the play and part of the dominance. I've seen buffalo do it as well. I've seen female buffalo mount male buffalo. I'm trying to look where the other hyena is. And I've seen males and males, females mount males. I'm fairly certain this is what the impala were listening to when they were all looking off in that one direction. Where are you off to, you little monster? Bouncy, 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 bouncy. Where did you go? There you are. So wonderful to see this lot out and about now that they've left the den and see what they get up to. Now running. Whatever they've been doing last night, it has involved rolling in the mud, which is something that hyenas do very regularly. And they're probably reveling in the temperature change in exactly the same way that we have been. He's just crossed into Buffelshoek now, just about to. Yep, racing back into Buffelshoek. I suspect, because I smelt this carcass yesterday, there's something dead just on the other side of the Buffelshoek cut line. When Brent and I were out on tracking team, we could smell it. We didn't know what it was, and of course, because it's outside of our boundary, we couldn't go and investigate. But there's definitely something large and very dead on the other side. Could be the remnants of a lion kill. The little one's crossed back. I think he's heading back for more food. And while he does that, before we go across to the hyena den, I want to show you something about what I meant about the way that hyenas walk. Because very conveniently, they left their tracks in the mud for us. Example for you, and then we're going to head across to the hyena den and see who's around.